High above Earth, the sky split open. A shadow passed across the stars, stretching wider than any continent. The flagship of the Ralzul Empire, a floating cathedral of conquest, descended into low orbit. Silver tendrils of magnetic scaffolding curled around it, thrumming with suppressed violence. Inside, corridors pulsed with alien light and antiseptic dread. Admiral Zoctun stood over the holographic table, his 6 crystalline eyes unblinking. Report. A junior tactician, barely a century old, stepped forward, voice crisp. Planetary resistance from major military forces remains negligible. Surveillance confirms human governments are fractured, outdated. Prime warriors largely decommissioned. Zoctun exhaled slowly, his mandibles flaring in disdain. They've retired? Yes, High One. Records indicate most combat-effective humans are no longer in service. Their militaries reassign them to leisure, consumption, gardening. He allowed a pause for effect. Zoctun leaned closer to the blue-lit map of Earth. And yet, your recon units fail to return from Arizona. The tactician's jaw clicked nervously. Anomaly. Possibly environmental interference. Anomaly? Zoctun hissed, voice slithering through the air. You do not lose 4 recon squads to an anomaly. He gestured. The map zoomed to a dry scar of American desert. A humble, forgotten town nestled among canyons and mesquite trees. One red blinking dot remained. Target designation, Hank Rourke. Former human war leader. Elite designation. Clearance level, Omega Black. The tactician paused, uncertain. His file is heavily redacted. Meaning, High One, even their own governments were afraid of him. Silence. The alien officers exchanged uneasy glances. No one ever retired from Omega Black. They just waited. On Earth, the Arizona sun burned down with casual malice. Heat waves shimmered across dusty roads, the kind of place where time slowed, and nothing happened fast, except bullets. Hank Rourke flipped a steak on his iron grill with one hand, beer bottle in the other. He wore faded jeans, a torn Lynyrd Skynyrd shirt, and sunglasses older than some wars. His dog, Half-Wolf, all attitude, lay curled in the shade, ears twitching. A breeze picked up. Rourke paused, nostrils flaring. The scent wasn't right. Burnt ozone. Synthetic carbon. The air had shifted. He turned to the open sky and raised an eyebrow. About time. Miles above, cloaked alien recon drones glided silently, heat signatures masked. Advanced optical camouflage made them invisible to satellites and radar. They moved with arrogant precision, each unit calibrated to hunt silently, swiftly, efficiently. They didn't notice the 6 tripwires strung between weathered fence posts, or the nail bomb tucked inside a fake mailbox, or the decoy flare hung in a scarecrow's belly. The first explosion lit the desert like lightning. By the time the second drone dropped, its wings severed and sparking, the others began frantically recalibrating. Too late. An EMP pulse from an antique microwave fried their systems. Another went dark. The final drone tried to flee, only for a shotgun slug to blow it out of the sky like a clay pigeon. Rourke pulled a lever beside his porch. A makeshift antenna whipped upward, rusty but effective. He leaned over the old ham radio console and cracked his knuckles. He pressed a button. To whomever's watching up there, his voice was a slow southern drawl soaked in sarcasm. This here's Hank Rourke, proud Earth citizen, property owner, and 2-time chili cook-off champion. Now I know y'all think you're slick, floating around in your big-ass ships with your invisible toys. He paused, lighting a cigar with a practiced flick. But let me make this clear. Retired don't mean weak. It means I got no paperwork, no commander, no leash. He blew smoke into the mic, so if you're still watching, that was me being nice. On board the flagship, static hissed from the comm channel. The bridge was frozen. The holographic map flickered. The red that was Rourke blinked twice, then turned gray. No heat signature, whispered a sensor tech. He's gone. Zoctun's voice was sharp. Gone? Your sensors fail again. No, Admiral. The temperature is still there. But the signature is indistinguishable. Blended. Blended how? Like the planet itself is hiding him. Zoctun took a step back, calculating. Deploy a retrieval team. Full combat strength. 6 elite drop pods screamed through Earth's atmosphere. They landed in perfect formation on Rourke's homestead, an intentional display of power. The team emerged, armored in ceramite plate, plasma rifles humming, neurohelmets scanning every molecule of dust. They found chickens, cactus, a grill still sizzling with meat. No target. The lead soldier stepped forward. Then his foot sank. Click. A landmine, homemade, pressure-sensitive, lined with ceramic shrapnel, detonated. He vaporized. The rest never had time to curse. Gunfire from a trilene. Shotgun blasts from the roof. A rigged propane tank ignited, engulfing the squad in fire and noise. And just like that, the most advanced warriors of the Ralzul's Second Fleet were gone. In less than 17 seconds. Back on the flagship, Admiral Zoctun watched the helmet cam footage loop. Again and again. He slowed it to a single frame. There. One figure. Human male. Long coat. Sunglasses. Standing with a lever-action rifle. And the calm of a man who's already planned 10 steps ahead. Rourke. Zoctun turned to the room. This is not war. This is ritual slaughter. A communications officer stammered. Hi One, we are receiving another message. Same frequency. Play it. Static. Then the gruff voice, half amused, half menace. Next time, don't send boys to do a galaxy's job. The Admiral's mandibles twitched. He felt something alien to his species. Something cold and strange. Discomfort. He clenched a fist. Initiate Vanguard protocol. I want that human skull on my command pillar. Even as he spoke, the bridge lights dimmed. A foreign signal spiked across their systems. Unfamiliar code written in pre-digital English, using syntax dead for centuries. Their AI froze. A message blinked across every console. Nice ship. Be a shame if someone reverse-engineered it. It vanished. Zoctun roared. How? Another silence fell over the bridge. This time darker. More uncertain. Meanwhile, miles below, Hank Rourke returned to his porch. He dusted off his jeans, sat down beside his dog, and took another swig of beer. Was wondering when they'd show, he muttered. The dog growled once, then settled. Rourke stared up at the sky, a hint of nostalgia behind his eyes. Kinda hoped retirement'd be boring. The radio crackled. A new voice came through. One he hadn't heard in years. Rourke. This is Mason. Whiskey Wolves are online. He smiled. You get the message? Oh, we got it. Just like old times. A beat passed. You sure about this, Hank? Rourke looked out across the desert, where alien plasma had turned cactus to glass. He took a long drag from his cigar and tapped the ash off into the dirt. They woke us up, he said softly. They don't get to walk away from that. Far above, the Ralzul Armada moved into attack formation. On Earth, the last of humanity's forgotten warriors, men and women buried in retirement, paperwork, and peaceful silence, began to stir. One by one, they answered old calls. Opened crates that hadn't been touched in decades. Assembled rifles passed down like sacred relics. Because when war calls Earth's old blood, it doesn't find civilians. It finds monsters made by governments who needed ghosts. Rourke leaned back. You wanted our planet, he muttered to the stars. Welcome to our front porch. The stars didn't answer, but the silence felt like fear. The sky over Kansas turned silver just after dawn. From every continent, civilians stared upward as massive ships descended. Slow, deliberate, inevitable. Children dropped their cereal spoons. Farmers stopped their tractors mid-field. News anchors choked on air before footage cut to static. They came in silence. No warning. No bluster. Because the Ralzul Empire didn't negotiate. They harvested. Inside the lead vessel, Lieutenant Corvan of the 7th Resource Vanguard studied Earth's planetary grid through his HUD, a rotating sphere marked by harvest zones, city centers, and soft clusters, civilian populations deemed pacified. Phase 1 is green, his assistant chirped, blinking under the glow of command lights. All metropolitan resistance suppressed. No military response in any quadrant. As expected. Corvan adjusted his neural socket. The data link hummed behind his eyes. Any signs of retaliation? None, sir. Planetary defense is fractured. Their governments did not unify under pressure. Most major cities appear compliant. Their youth idle. He exhaled sharply through his nasal slits. Then initiate declaration of claim. At his command, dozens of drones descended across the skies. Sleek, humming, impersonal. Each one projected a holographic sigil into the clouds, a burning symbol of the Empire. It glowed above fields and malls, over oceans and mountains. This world is now under benevolent custody. Resources will be collected. Compliance ensures minimal harm. On Earth, the message broadcast in every language. And it was met with silence. No armies surged forward. No missiles launched. No global conference convened. To the Ralzul, this confirmed what their databases already assumed. Earth's inhabitants were disconnected. Weak. Broken by infighting and peace. But the silence had weight. Corvan reviewed another scan. Mark Zone 24 Theta for sweep. I want extraction metrics on mineral, biomass, and atmospheric conversion. The assistant hesitated. Zone 24. That's within the American territory of Arizona. Corvan's upper lip curled. And, sir, that is the region where. I'm aware. The anomaly. His voice sharpened. We neutralized that threat. One incident does not define a species. But, sir. Corvan spun, talons clicking. This is a harvest world. Not a battlefield. Not a myth. A resource. And we are here to extract. He didn't wait for acknowledgement. The deck echoed with his authority. But behind him, the assistant's mandibles twitched in hesitation. Something about Earth was off. Not like the others. Down below, the town of Broxton, Kansas, felt like a postcard. Wooden porches. Waving flags. Kids with bikes and popsicles. Until the ships arrived. Now, the streets were empty. Only a single old man remained outside, rocking slowly in a chair beside a faded American flag. His name was Grady Lane, ex-Navy, retired. Leg brace, cataract in one eye, and a shotgun resting across his lap like a faithful dog. He watched the alien drones float overhead with the same squint he once used spotting Soviet submarines. A boy crept onto the porch from inside. "Grandpa, do we run?" Grady didn't flinch. "Nope." But Mom said. "I heard her. You stay put." A drone turned, locking onto them. It hovered, camera iris dilating. Grady stared right at it. "Get the dog, Jimmy." "Are we gonna?" I said, "Get the damn dog." The drone dropped lower, voice smooth and cold. "Citizen, relinquish all metallic items and proceed to evacuation vector 12. Grady Lane spit into a rusty can and racked the shotgun. "Y'all ever heard of the Tet Offensive?" The drone hesitated. Calculated. Miscalculated. It moved. Grady fired. From the barn roof, a second shotgun answered. Then a third from the neighbors. By the time the fourth drone arrived, 3 old men were already flanking the street, armed with hunting rifles and grim expressions. Jimmy peeked out the door again. "They're old," he whispered. Inside the Ralzul command vessel, Corvan reviewed the anomaly reports with increasing frustration. "Retirees? This resistance is being mounted by biologicals past prime, elders. No official military mobilization. These are independent actions," the tactician stammered. "Localized, improvised, but effective." Corvan leaned closer to the screen. Footage of ambush drones. Booby-trapped grain silos, homemade EMPs, radio jammers built for microwaves. A familiar face appeared in a grainy, intercepted video. Hank Rourke. He stood before a knocked-out dropship, holding a flamethrower, eyes hidden behind mirrored glasses. "We told y'all once. This is our backyard. You don't come uninvited." Corvan's knuckles tightened on the rail. The enemy was untrained, unsanctioned, ancient. And yet they moved with the patience of wolves and the precision of surgeons. Corvan activated the broader combat feeds. All across the American Midwest, former veterans were surfacing. Radio chatter buzzed with call signs from 100 forgotten operations. Ranger Whiskey calling Eagle Fong. I've got bogies near the wheat fields. Got M. Claymores in position. Just like Fallujah. God, I missed this. Anybody got eyes on command? We are the command, jackass. It made no sense. No hierarchy. No coordination. Just chaos. Adaptation. Fun. Back in the cornfields, Grady Lane tossed a bag of nails onto a dirt path. Jimmy watched in disbelief as a disguised wheelchair battery exploded beneath another alien scout unit. They're supposed to be the best in the galaxy, the boy muttered. Grady loaded another shell. And I was supposed to be playing checkers right now. From across the town, a CB radio squawked. A dozen other retirees answered. Men and women who'd once been invisible. Now armed. Now grinning. Like a generation too stubborn to die had finally been given something to do again. The aliens tried harder. They sent autonomous tanks. The tanks sank into pre-flooded irrigation trenches. They tried air strikes. The airspace filled with chaff from microwave towers and homemade rocket launchers. They tried direct command. That was a mistake. Corvan himself led the next wave, descending with a full cadre of elite troopers to confront the resistance in a converted grain storage hub. He expected ambushes. He expected desperation. He didn't expect a band. Inside the hub, music blared from dusty speakers, Motorhead, AC/DC, ZZ Top, the kind of music that didn't ask permission. And standing in the center, surrounded by sandbags and spotters in lawn chairs, was Hank Rourke. Corvan stepped forward, plasma rifle raised. You are outnumbered, surrounded, disarmed. Hank grinned. Son, if you think I'm ever disarmed, you really haven't been paying attention. He pulled a cord. Above, a silo door blew outward. An alien walker tumbled down the roof, crashing into Corvan soldiers. Smoke filled the hangar. Out of it came human shadows. Slow, old, but deliberate. One carried a compound bow. One rolled a walker-mounted minigun. One leaned on a cane, then used it to smash a drone's visual node with lethal precision. Corvan fired. His bolt passed inches from Hank, but the old soldier ducked sideways with casual muscle memory. He tackled the lieutenant hard enough to drive the alien through a wooden crate. Their faces met. You ever run up Heartbreak Ridge, you smug bastard? Rourke growled. Corvan activated his armor pulse. Rourke countered with a taser hidden in his belt buckle. Corvan screamed. From outside, more humans poured in. Women in wheelchairs tossing Molotovs. Grandpas with flamethrowers built from propane tanks and golf carts. The aliens retreated. Again. Back in orbit, the strategic feed turned red. Fleet Command demanded answers. Corvan stood at attention, blood dripping from his jaw. Their soldiers are not soldiers, he said hoarsely. They are hobbyists. You mean irregulars? Someone asked. No. I mean they're doing this for fun. The line went silent. Another signal burst across the alien frequency. Untraceable. Unauthorized. It was just one line spoken by Rourke. You thought you'd broken us down to pieces. But pieces scatter. And then they regroup. A whisper moved through the bridge. One of the alien engineers turned slowly to his colleague. No species should evolve this way, he muttered. Why would they train every generation in war and then release them? Another one added quietly. Is this cultural insanity? And deeper inside Corvan's mind, buried beneath training and doctrine and pride, a new emotion began to germinate. One the Raul had never catalogued, because they believed they were immune to it. He didn't recognize it yet. But it was fear. And it was growing. In Kansas, Grady Lane sat back in his chair again, wind ruffling his thinning hair. Jimmy leaned next to him, eyes wide. Grandpa, are we going to win? Grady chuckled softly. We ain't got to win, kid. Jimmy frowned. Then why? We just got to make sure they lose. And, as the boy looked out across the fields, lit now by smoking alien wreckage and the rising sound of Led Zeppelin, he understood. The fight wasn't over. It was just getting fun. And the old wolves had come out to play. Darkness blanketed the upper atmosphere like a wound that refused to heal. From the edges of Earth's orbit, strategist Cyrilake observed the planet through his crystalline interface, his synthetic mind cycling through millions of simulations per second. His neural lattice was 3,000 years old, designed by the Ralzul's finest minds to conquer, adapt, and, if necessary, exterminate. He had cracked insurgencies across 3 galaxies, broken rebellions before they were born, unraveled empires in a single campaign. But Earth wasn't behaving. The data didn't fit. That was the first problem. The species' behavioral markers were inconsistent with any known sapient profile. They were simultaneously tribal and global, hyperviolent and irrationally compassionate. And now they were fighting like soldiers long after they'd been retired. No genetic program. No imperial compulsion. No survivalist urgency. Just choice. Cyrilake watched another replay. An alien drone caught in a noose trap made from an old bicycle chain and piano wire. A kill shot delivered by a woman in her 70s, sitting in a rocking chair, wearing house slippers and humming Jolene. He paused the footage, analyzed her expression. No rage, no panic, just satisfaction. He didn't understand it. Run the emotional readouts again, he instructed the AI core embedded in the vessel's spine. Already done, strategist, it replied. The humans demonstrate high cognitive flexibility and emotional unpredictability. Their actions defy conventional behavioral analysis. Then expand the parameters. I have. And. Error, the AI said flatly. I cannot predict them. Cyrilake closed his eyes. This wasn't war. It was something older. He pulled up the latest intel streams from ground operations. Kansas was a disaster. Arizona, a graveyard of elite units. Oregon had gone dark entirely after an encounter with a group identified only as the Elk Lodge. The feed cut to an old man with a prosthetic arm flipping the bird before launching an RPG into a dropship's engine core. This was not supposed to happen. Earth was not a Class A combat world. It lacked centralized power structures. Its military cohesion was fragmented. Half its satellites were broken. The other half played reruns of Seinfeld. But the more Cyrilake observed, the more he saw a pattern, not in their order, but in their chaos. A human mind wasn't governed by protocol. It was governed by spite. And nowhere was that spite more elegantly weaponized than by the woman known as Mama Joe. Her real name was Josephine Margaret Carlyle. Age, 68. Residence, St. Catherine's Assisted Living, Missouri. Status, civilian. History, NSA logistics planner, cyber warfare tactician. Retired 21 years prior after being deemed too aggressive for peacetime. Now she sat in a wheelchair with a laptop on her thighs and a Bluetooth earpiece shaped like a cherry blossom, issuing commands to a global resistance from a damn nursing home. All right, boys, she said, voice thick with southern honey and steel. Convoy Alpha needs to reroute through Nebraska. Drones overhead. We'll spoof the tracking with highway traffic. ETA, 26 minutes. She sipped her chamomile tea. Jerry, how's that weather satellite coming? It's going, Joe, came the scratchy reply. I got the launch codes, but I gotta bypass the two-factor authentication. Need a hand? Nah. I stole a retinal scanner from my cousin's pawn shop. Good man. She turned slightly, nodding at the nurse, trying not to cry in the corner. Be a dear, and we'll meet closer to the router. These old hips don't rotate like they used to. Up above, Cyrilake's interface buzzed with spikes of activity. Hijacked satellites. Communications relays rerouted. Resource convoys redirected into ambushes laid by seniors on golf carts. He watched a convoy get annihilated by what the logs labeled as Operation Pickle Jar. What even is that? He whispered. The AI responded. Analysis. The humans filled industrial-sized jars with steel ball bearings, black powder, and pressure seals, then launched them via catapult. They used catapults. Yes. And they worked. Correct. He stared into the void of space. Why, he asked softly. Why do they keep fighting? Unknown. He tried to rationalize. Maybe it was religious instinct. Perhaps a misfire of cultural evolution. Something that made them violent past utility. But the more he watched, the more he realized something else. They enjoyed it. Not just the fighting. The frustration they caused. Every failed recon. Every hijacked drone. Every supply route rerouted by ancient postal workers with road flares and walkie-talkies. There was a word for it, an ancient Terran term. Trolling. The humans were trolling an empire. He accessed a restricted archive. A video decades old, buried in Earth's data web. A stand-up comic from the 1990s, pacing across a stage. We're the only species, the man said. That goes, welp, I'm too old to work, but just young enough to start trouble. The audience laughed. Cyrilake didn't. He pulled up Earth's psychological warfare files. One dossier in particular, WW Protocol, Whiskey Wolves. The file opened with a photograph. 6 men, beards, sunglasses, all between 55 and 80. Former Spec Ops, black budget ghosts, and CIA field officers. All officially dead. All now reported active in Kansas, Colorado, Texas. Their motto was scrawled on the back of a beer can. Retirement just means we don't have to ask permission. He read it again. Then again. A communication flashed. Fleet Command demanded status. Progress. Explanations. He sent none. Instead, Cyrilake began preparing. He activated the planetary PsyOps network. If physical conquest failed, psychological degradation would follow. They would flood the human resistance with confusion, misinformation, dread. He broadcast subtle messages in their frequency. Audio pulses designed to trigger fear. Simulations of defeat. Ghost transmissions claiming resistance leaders were dead or captured. And for a moment it worked. Scattered units went dark. Some humans wavered. But then Mama Joe hacked the PSYOP relay and hijacked the signal. She replaced it with Eye of the Tiger. Volume max. Cyrilake's bridge vibrated with pounding drums and cheap 80 synth. He bared his synthetic teeth. You mock us, he growled. Mama Joe's voice cut through. No, darlin'. We welcome you. Another video feed opened uninvited. Rourke. Standing in the wreckage of a Ralzul dropship, his arms folded. Behind him, other veterans gathered. Dirty, bruised, half-laughing. You thought we were done fighting? Rourke said. Nah. He stepped forward, camera shaking. Fighting is just the warm-up. Another signal joined. A woman with prosthetic arms and a Bowie knife the size of a shovel. We're just stretching, she said. A man who looked like he'd bench press a freight train. You started this war. We just decided not to sit it out. One by one, humans old and older chimed in. I retired from the army. Not from revenge. My husband's gone, but his gear's still good. This ain't payback. This is preventative medicine. Cyrilake felt a tremor in his synthetic spine. He wasn't sure if it was fear. Or something worse. Respect. Another voice spoke, quiet but firm. A young boy, face dirty, clutching a slingshot. They woke up Grandpa. Everyone fell silent. Rourke's eyes gleamed behind his mirrored lenses. You know what that means. Cyrilake cut the feed. He stared out into space. They weren't soldiers anymore. They were culture. They were tradition. They were spite distilled into a species. And worst of all, they were enjoying this. He opened his final protocols. The last phase. Total orbital cleansing. No more games. No more analysis. But just before he gave the order, a whisper crawled through the encrypted system. A single message, bouncing between satellites, ghosting through security walls. See you soon. Followed by coordinates. To one of their own ships. A dreadnought. Hijacked. Cyrilake slowly stood. He zoomed in. Inside the stolen vessel, Rourke lit a cigar. Behind him, the Whiskey Wolves were already adjusting alien systems with a level of comfort that no human should ever possess. Mama Joe's voice came in next. You're not dealing with warriors anymore, sweetheart. You're dealing with veterans. And we got nothing left to lose except time. Rourke pointed directly at the ship's camera. And we're coming up. Lake watched them activate the jump engines. Not to flee, to board, to come for him. The strategist, forged in logic, bred for control, built for war, finally felt something impossible to quantify. And for the first time, he whispered it aloud. This is doubt. The throne chamber of Emperor Zaltun floated in zero-gravity silence, suspended by null-field architecture and held together by sheer arrogance. He stared into the panoramic viewport of the command dome as Earth spun slowly below, a marble of swirling chaos. Dotted across its surface were the scars of failed landings, shattered convoys, and ships that once bore the pride of the Ralzul Armada, now rusting in human scrapyards, picked apart by farmers with blowtorches and attitudes. Around him, high priests of the war caste whispered in desperate bursts, translating lost metrics, trying to frame them as adaptive anomalies and temporary setbacks. Zaltun heard none of it. He saw only the impossibility. How, he murmured. Did we fail to see it coming? No one dared answer. Below, human resistance units moved like ghosts, untethered to chain of command, linked only by ancient grudges and CB radios. Every plan the Empire executed collapsed under a weightless swarm of grandfathers, mechanics, bow hunters, and Vietnam vets with homemade rocket sleds. This wasn't a rebellion. This was vengeance with a retirement plan. The war, as far as humans were concerned, wasn't strategic. It was personal. And no species in the galaxy had evolved for personal warfare the way humans had. Not like this. Not with this flavor of bitter humor, generational spite, and the kind of tactical improvisation that made AI systems implode from logical paradox. And now, the worst of it had happened. They'd breached orbit. On the far edge of the command chamber, a screen flickered to life. Grainy. Static-filled. Hijacked. On it, Hank Rourke. Helmet off. Sunglasses on. "Evenin', Your Majesty," he drawled, standing on the bridge of a stolen Ralzul dreadnought. "Mind if we park for a bit?" Zaltun's mandibles tightened. "You've made a mistake, human. This is not a war you can win." "You're right," Rourke replied, tapping ash from his cigar. "But see, that was never the point." Behind him, the Whiskey Wolves stood ready, patched up, armored in a fusion of stolen tech and old habits. They didn't look like soldiers. They looked like nightmares dressed as lawn dads. Mama Joe's voice came over the comm next. "We're not here to win. We're here to end it." Aboard the flagship, the internal alarms finally sounded. Breach detected. Forward hangar. Deck 5. Zaltun rose from his throne. "Seal all entrances," he growled. "Purge the invaders." But it was already too late. The outer hull ruptured with surgical force, and from the vacuum stepped a dozen figures, not elegant, not graceful, but unshakably certain. They moved with a slowness born from experience, conserving energy, watching corners, checking flanks. A Ralzul honor guard opened fire. The humans responded not with panic, but with laughter. Rourke slid under a plasma bolt and came up swinging, his fist connecting with the chin of a 10-foot enforcer. "God, I missed this," he muttered, driving a knife into the alien's chest. Behind him, another retiree, a wiry man in his 60s named Delgado, tossed a magnetic charge onto the ceiling. Bingo nights canceled, fellas. The explosion rippled through the corridor. Inside the flagship, chaos bloomed. Zaltun watched his control vanish sector by sector as humans rewrote his ship from the inside. They didn't want territory. They wanted leverage, memory, justice. Lake's voice crackled in from another ship. "They're not fighting like an army. They're fighting like it's personal," Zaltun finished. "Because to them, it is." The Emperor clenched his talons, looked once more at Earth. The planet pulsed with defiance. Not organized, not clean, but alive in a way his empire had never understood. He turned to his remaining guard. "Ready my armor." The door blew in before they could move. Smoke poured through the gap, followed by the sound of an old cassette player. Johnny Cash. "I hurt myself today." Then came Rourke, limping slightly, knuckles bruised, flanked by 4 humans who looked like they should be arguing about lawnmower parts, not leading an orbital raid. Zaltun rose, magnificent and tall in his ceremonial gear. "You presume to challenge me here? On my throne." "I don't need the throne," Rourke said. "Just your attention. You had that the moment you started killing my people." "I retired 10 years ago," Rourke replied. "I didn't want to come back. You made that choice for me." Zaltun activated his war staff, a hum of energy arcing across the room. "You think age makes you worthy?" "No," Rourke said, cracking his neck. "It just makes us more efficient." The fight didn't last long. Because humans don't fight fair. The wolves had rigged the floor. Mama Joe looped his internal targeting. And Rourke, despite age and scars, moved like a force of habit wrapped in experience. Zaltun fell, armor cracking, disbelief in his eyes. "Why won't you yield?" Rourke leaned close. "We stopped yielding when our brothers didn't come home. When our kids got drafted. When our damn skies turned silver and you landed thinking you were gods." He stood, voice sharp. "You wanted a quiet planet," he said, loud now to all listening. "You picked the wrong species." Outside the flagship, the human resistance broadcast across all channels. Not a demand. Not a threat. Just a statement. Earth is not prey. They didn't take the fleet. Didn't torch the Empire. They sent the ships back. Empty. One message scrawled in burnt code on the hull. "Next time knock." Back on Earth, Rourke sat again on his porch, boots kicked up, cigar lit. His dog wagged its tail as fireworks, some real, some repurposed flares, lit the sky. The stars sparkled. Mama Joe's voice hummed over the comms. "Think they'll come back?" Rourke sipped his beer. "If they do, they'll bring a damn army. And us." He smiled. "We'll bring the lawn chairs." The stars didn't answer. But the silence? That felt a lot like respect.